Identify Unity use cases. When we look at any type of storage platform, we have to understand what its purpose is. So one of the things we do often is look at use cases of that particular platform. As we look at the Unity VSA, we know that there are many different use cases. But in this particular instance, we are going to cover three specific use cases that may be applicable to you and to your business: remote branch office, test development environment, and point solutions or project specific solutions. First, we'll start with remote branch offices. One of the biggest issues with a remote branch office is talking about backups. So when you have infrastructure at a remote office, you have backup infrastructure there to make sure that you have all of your data covered and you're able to recover anything you need to. But the issue is that oftentimes people take those backups home, whether that be tape or external hard drives that you swap out, or you do some kind of third-party replication solution, and it's not always the best solution for that particular remote branch office. So when we start talking about a use case, we can look at a file server. Most remote branch offices have a file server on-prem that they utilize for that local team, and then they need to back that up somehow. So one of the things that you can use a Unity VSA for is to go ahead and stand it up and then use it for its file function. You set up the file portion and then you present shares of different types out to clients on that site, and you're able to then review that information, capture that information, delete that information, modify that information, just like any other file-based server. And then you can simply use the replication built into the Unity VSA natively to take that data and send it back to a centralized repository, either to a physical Unity on-prem at your central data center, or to a Unity VSA that's centralized to your production data center. What this does is it gives you the flexibility and capability of having a true enterprise class file system and file infrastructure at your remote branch office. Another use case is a small hypervisor deployment. So sometimes you need a little more infrastructure than just a file server out at that remote. So what you can do is you can stand up a Unity VSA, and then any servers you have, like a domain controller, an app server, file repository, whatever that might be, you can take those servers and put those onto data stores presented to VMware from your Unity VSA. What that then allows you to do is utilize snapshot technology at the LUN level to capture data, capture snapshots of that infrastructure that's sitting there. And then you can also replicate it offsite again to a centralized location back in your primary production data center, so you can keep it protected, but you don't have to worry about all the risk associated with having your employees taking data offsite, because that is one of the biggest risks that you could possibly have for a remote branch office. Is you ask employees to take your backups offsite to their home, where that can be stolen from a car, stolen from their home, data can be taken, lost, whatever the case may be. It's a significant risk to your business, and this helps to reduce that. The next use case is test dev environments or test development environments. Most organizations have a desire to test some of their software applications before they roll to production. So they might have a multi-tiered approach to their software deployments or infrastructure, where they would have a production, a test, a QA, a development. And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to test as much as you possibly can before you do roll to production to reduce risk for the organization. So oftentimes what happens is the company cannot afford a separate SAN specifically for doing test dev code rollouts, because every SAN has an operating system on it. You have to deploy newer versions, and those newer versions will have problems sometimes. They do a pretty thorough job of testing, but they get released and they will sometimes have flaws or issues or bugs that need to be addressed. So one of the best things you can do is, since this utilizes essentially the same code as what a physical Unity does, you can take your code base, you can apply it to your Unity VSA, and you can make sure that everything is working as expected. So this code upgrade allows you to do testing without ever having to worry about affecting your production environment. Oftentimes what I see is organizations or companies will roll out that test code to their test SAN, or to their, in this case, it would be a Unity VSA, and they let that bake in. They utilize that device for several weeks or a week or a month or whatever the case may be for their environment to determine if there's any effect or negative effect or positive effect, whatever it may be, to the production environment. Another use case within the test development use case scenario is a test dev isolation. So when we look at our production versus our test dev environments, a lot of times what happens is people will put something into test and dev, they'll do some work on it, they'll do some code upgrades, and then they just push it into production. So if you're doing proper release cycles, that doesn't mean taking a server and renaming it as a production server and then putting in into a production IP space. That usually means building out a new server and then doing a new install of the software or the update, and you're really getting true test dev isolation. So one of the ways that you can accomplish that from a storage perspective is to deploy a Unity VSA. That would allow you to deploy your test dev environment utilizing that SAN and having total segregation from your production environment. So you really can do true testing, true isolation, and make sure that your applications and your infrastructure is going to perform as expected. Point solutions or project specific solutions. Every organization has a need to deploy just either a stopgap solution, they need to keep something segregated from other environments, whatever the case may be, but a Unity VSA would be a great opportunity for you to do that. When we say a great opportunity for a point solution, a department-specific solution is a great example. Let's say you have an HR department in a large organization. They have several applications that they have to run. They've got a budget that they want to utilize, and your organization for some reason does not believe in centralized budget usage. IT is segregated out by department and not centralized. So if it's not centralized, each department has its own budget. And the last thing you want is you don't want a lot of different SAN infrastructures roaming around your environment that you might have to maintain or take care of. So one thing you can do is you can have that internal customer, that department, in this case HR, purchase a Unity VSA. It aligns with what you might have physically, or you might have other virtual infrastructure or virtual SAN infrastructure like another Unity VSA for another department. It allows you to really centralize your supportability and really increase the supportability when it comes down to it. So you can deploy specific to a department. Another use case for a point solution is for security isolation. So if you look at large manufacturing facilities or large manufacturing businesses, you'll find often that there's an R&D department. So one huge concern for research and development groups is letting their secret sauce out, the thing that really makes their business unique from someone else. So let's take a tire manufacturer, for example. A tire has different tread types, they have different rubber compounds, they have many different things that make their product secret or specific. And the last thing they want to do in that research and development department, or the organization wants to do, is risk leaking that information. So if you can deploy a Unity VSA specific to that R&D group and really do security isolation, put in firewalls to keep it segregated from other pieces of the network infrastructure, that really helps to reduce the risk and really helps you to make it clandestine from any of the other environments, so you can significantly lower your risk from a security standpoint. Lastly, you could also deploy as an application-specific solution. If you look at large financials packages like Microsoft Dynamics or PeopleSoft Financials, a lot of times you'll have an application, a web, and a database server. That multi-tiered application, you could easily deploy that in a pod type of configuration. Well, what do I mean by pod? So if we look at that multi-tiered application, what else is required? Well, we need to have a storage solution to go with it. So if we take a Unity VSA and we take each one of those pieces of the tier and we turn that into a self-contained infrastructure, you're able to really make a decision on what you want to do with that long term. So you can replicate from the Unity VSA elsewhere, and it's going to take all the components of your multi-tiered application. It really just gives you the ability to keep it all together, keep it self-contained, and make it as efficient as possible so you can reduce the risk and reduce troubleshooting when it comes time if it really is a critical or important part of your infrastructure.